So 350.
Yeah, 350. They've got 25 crore cash.
They've got 25 back.
So, you know, that much, the security receipts, if they are revamped, will, you know, give some money. But if those assets are not revamped, they are just paper. Okay, that's the sum and substance. Mayuresh, Joshi, first thoughts?
So again, Lata, slippage is a little bit higher than what we had estimated. We went by the management commentary of 1,300 odd crores to come through in terms of fresh slippages. In terms of how the gross NPAs have panned out, rather I think it's more to do with how the numbers were expected to come through this time round. So largely I think if you adjust for the recovery and upgrades as the number that you're just telling me, I think the numbers largely look quite okay, specifically in terms of how the gross NPAs have panned out.
Okay, but if you were expecting 1,300 and this comes at 1,474, it's not a whole lot higher. I mean, how much does it come to? It's about 10% higher than what you thought, maybe. Not significantly higher. And did you expect this good level of recoveries?
No, not at all. I mean, at least on the recovery front, exceptional set of numbers. But yes, I think if you look at the absolute number, 160, 170 odd crores is not a huge number in terms of the balance sheet that Axis Bank carries at this point of time. So largely, I think the street will take that into its stride. What will probably take place is the management commentary going forward in terms of what the restructured pipeline is looking like, what they're looking in terms of credit costs going forward in the system, and what happens to the corporate stroke SME accounts as
okay, we can give you a few more details on that as well. Advances have grown by 21%, as I just said. That's 24% of retail advances growth. So that clearly is the good book. The retail advances, after a 24% growth, stand at 1.38 lakh crore, and that is 41% of their net advances. So clearly they are de-risking themselves from exposure to corporates. Now it's 41%. I think they were anyway standing at 40%. So they've just inched up to 41%. If they were to include SME loans that qualify regulatorily as retail, then the share of retail loans goes to 45%. So that's the element of de-risking that they have done. Corporate credit has grown by 22% and stands at 1.5 lakh crore. That's of course 46% of the total. SME advances 8%. The current and savings accounts have constitute 47% of total deposits. That's significant. It's a large low-cost deposit load that they have, and that grew by 20%. So that's much better than the 16% they grew in the previous year. So well, even that looks like
given a whole industry-wise distribution breakup as well. So for example, for sectors within infrastructure, their fund-based outstanding loans is 6.75%, non-fund based is 9.95%. So total outstanding is 7.47%. So infrastructure stands at the highest level at this point. Engineering and electronics 6.56, financial companies 6.31, and power generation and distribution at 5.80. Real estate 3.51%. Iron and steel, which everyone would be interested in, stands at around 3.38% in terms of a total book exposure.
That's not a whole lot since that's a stressed sector.
Yeah.
I remember Shikha Sharma telling us that 8% of their total book is exposed to those 10 top indebted groups which Credit Suisse had identified. But even over there, some of those stressed companies would be a little less stressed in the last 2 quarters, or at least the last quarter, because of the improvement in steel prices and the minimum import price. Mayuresh, Joshi, what's your comment on the stock now?
We still like the stock, Lata, and as you rightly pointed out, as you mentioned, the bank's funded exposure to highly leveraged group, at least at the end of the last quarter, stood at around 8%. Now, if it is stable and it showed signs of improvement, that shows drastic improvement in terms of the management outlook towards these highly leveraged groups. Apart from that, my own belief is that with the kind of retail advances, the kind of growth
Can you
that one
just hold on for a minute, Mayuresh? We have some bad news in the form of IDFC Bank numbers. The net NPA has trebled from 453 crores. The net NPA has gone up to 1139 crore. So
this is the first quarter. Yeah, this is the first quarter that they've reported as a fully fledged functional bank, Lata. So nobody had any expectations because nobody knew what to expect expect from IDFC Bank. But like you mentioned, gross NPLs have worsened.
That's Bharti Infratel numbers. Okay, a bunch of numbers.
Bharti Infratel, while you all were discussing Axis, I did pour through the numbers. They've beaten all parameters. They've done a 17% profit growth, which was well ahead of our estimates. The EBITDA has risen by about 5.6%, again beating the CNBC TVarian estimates. And the revenue was not expected to move at all. We were expecting very flat top line, but Bharti Infratel has delivered. There's a 2.2% growth, so well, optically at least better than estimates. So Bharti's numbers seem to be good, but the problem seems to be with the IDFC.
Yeah. I think the story of the evening is not Axis Bank, it's IDFC Bank, where the gross NPA has come in on an absolute basis at 6.16% versus 3.09% Q-on-Q. Net NPA has come in at 2.39%, and this compares to 0.98%. It's a very tough balance sheet that they've reported this time round, the P&L. In terms of the net profit, 165 crores is what they've reported. So that and the provisions should come up as well. In terms of the provisions, what they have delivered
provisions is
not much,
1189. Okay, no.
No, it's 11.89.
11.89.
11.89 crores. Yeah. So tax expenses is lower, so 82.87 crores. So that seems to have supported the bottom line a little bit. If it was similar to last quarter, then maybe there would have been more stress.
NII number?
Yes,
I think it will flash past.
Yeah, I think it's a little about 400 crores for the NII this quarter.
Okay, the gross NPLs have risen from 3% to 6%. So that is the sad story, the difficult story. Obviously, part of the old IDFC loans have come to the bank, and some of these obviously are turning bad. One thought that they had done some kitchen sinking in terms of bad loans, but looks like there is still a very difficult trajectory ahead. I mean, if you were an infrastructure lender at some point in time, you shouldn't be surprised that there would be more trouble with infrastructure lenders. So that has doubled from 1462 crores. It has gone to 3058 crores. So exactly doubling. That's a little more than doubling. About 100 crores more than just doubling of gross NPLs, and the net NPLs rise from 453 to 1139. That's a trebling, 3 times more. The gross NPLs as a percentage is rising from 3.09 to 6.2, and the net NPLs rising from under 1%, 0.98% to 2.39%. So this is not something that the market will be able to stomach. Mayuresh, if you're still with us, your thoughts on the IDFC Bank numbers?
No, again, much worse than what the street was expecting, what I was expecting. But again, as you rightly pointed out, a predominant portion of their advance book or their book in general is skewed towards infrastructure, telecom, and that is going to take a toll from a short to medium term perspective. Once the cyclical recovery is seen and is evident in these sectors, the write-offs we're probably seeing at this point of time should start bottoming out. But it is going to take at least a quarter or two for some amount of respite to start coming through. Till that point of time, I think the street has to just state that the numbers will be on the soft and tepid side, at least on the asset quality for IDFC Bank.
I was just taking a look at the breakup in terms of the segmental revenues, and of course retail is almost non-existent for IDFC Bank right now. Wholesale banking has shown, if you're looking at it, of course, quarter on quarter, there's a minor degrowth. There's a minor growth that's come in. Wholesale banking revenue now stands at 1,231 crore rupees as opposed to 1178 crore rupees in the previous quarter. So a little bit of growth in the book. Of course, retail banking, I guess they want to eventually go and build a retail franchise. Right now, of course, the numbers are very, very thin. Well, just 10 crores is what.
I'd really like to hear the management commentary, because last quarter they were very positive in terms of what they had delivered. It was the first quarter that they had delivered, and 242 crores in terms of profits, and one couple of the statements included that they had provided for a large part of the loans before the RBI's AQR even took place. So I'd really like to hear the management commentary in terms of what exactly happened this quarter for the gross NPLs to rise 300 basis points in one quarter itself. Net interest margins on loans last quarter was at around 3.2%, and total net interest margins were at 2%. So this would be something to watch out for tomorrow.
Okay. Mayuresh, do you have a current call on the stock? I mean, do you have a rating on IDFC Bank at all, given its short history?
No rating as on the stocks will be per se, but again, I think this is a long gone out story, and this is a story that investors, if they're intending to stay put for the next 3 to 4 years, should be looking at a very systematic way of putting in money. Clearly, as I mentioned earlier, from a short to medium term perspective, the stock will remain under stress in terms of how that book pans out. And again, I think it's the cyclical recovery on the economy part that will basically give a lending hand to IDFC Bank. So I think no rating at this point of time, but again, investors holding on should have a pretty long view on the stock at this juncture.
What's your price target on Axis Bank, Mayuresh?
We're basically looking at another 10 to 15% to say the least upside from the current levels. But again, I think largely we look at management commentary and then probably take a call in terms of how the estimates will pan out.
Does this improve your expectations from ICICI?
No, again, largely that ICICI Bank is expected to report a similar set of numbers in terms of what they reported in Q3, and that was what the management commentary largely was trying to mention in the last con call. What really happens post this quarter numbers will be very interesting to note in terms of what kind of recognition that they do for the entire fiscal year ahead, what kind of credit costs they are building up, what kind of stress they expect the economy to throw up specifically from the corporate and the SME book. And if there is some glimmer of hope, I think the earnings for FY17, specifically the second half, along with the base that they're carrying from FY16, will appear much better. And earnings growth in that sense, with credit growth coming through and expected to come through in the second half, should be in excess of 20% for both ICICI and Axis in my opinion.
Meanwhile, just to go away from banking for a second, I just want to point out the buyback from Bharti Infratel has come through. The price is 450 rupees a share, which is a substantial premium to where the stock closed today. Today's closing is 363. The company is willing to offer 450. It's a tender route that they've gone in for, and the total value of the buyback is 2,000 crore rupees. This is, of course, one of the things, aside from the result performance, one of the things that the analyst community had been watching out for. So just thought I'll add that as a Bharti Infratel sidelight.
Fair point. Bharti Infratel, of course, is the standout performer. Axis Bank, I would still say, is a very good performance going by the numbers that they have given us, whether it is slippages or whether it is provisioning or recoveries, or even the growth of the book. I mean, it's actually growth which lets you take these kinds of hits in your stride, and to have de-risked the book to the extent of going 45% into retail and still growing at 20% their advances indicates that they are in a robust state to be able to take shocks. And if most of the shocks are taken, as the numbers indicate, then perhaps Axis Bank has seen its worst. It looks like a good set of numbers for Axis Bank, very difficult set of numbers for IDFC, and they have a long haul ahead. It's not easy to build a retail franchise. Liability or assets, both are equally difficult at a time when there are, a zillion ways to save money. Before you realize, payment banks are going to be round the corner, wallets will be round the corner, internet interfaces will be round the corner, unified payment services. So IDFC Bank has a tough time ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we could definitely expect IDFC Bank in the red tomorrow, and maybe Axis could possibly be in the green. But
okay, Mayuresh, just a final question. Do you think Bank Nifty gets charged tomorrow? Will the rally tomorrow get some legs because of Axis performance?
Not really, Lata. I think the numbers were good again, but what happens with the larger pack is something to be seen. So I think the PSU pack is going to be a joker in the card. What really happens is that in terms of asset quality, and if they really surprise, I think the rally to the Bank Nifty then will be quite substantial. But again, I think nobody's expecting any great numbers to come through, specifically from the PSU pack, and that will have a telling effect in terms of how the Bank Nifty will perform from a short to medium term perspective. However, I think looking at the general trend in the market currently, looking at the global situation, I think the Bank Nifty might have some more legs, and with numbers which are quite supportive at this point of time of what have come through, and yes, Bank reporting numbers tomorrow, I think if yes can report a stable set of numbers in terms of asset quality as it did last quarter, that can have some amount of fillip in terms of how the Bank Nifty responds.
Okay, do you look at Bharti Infratel? You have a comment? Should I be read out?
Really on the buy, I was just curious, Mayuresh, in case you have any view on the company, buyback is 2,000 crore rupees. Price is very handsome. 450 is what they're offering compared to where the stock closed today.
Didn't have a look at the numbers per se, but the buyback price definitely looks very, very tempting from the current market price that Bharti Infratel has. Now, one must really understand with the kind of spectrum sells that are probably happening with Videocon selling its share. The tenancy ratio of Bharti Infratel is expected to remain stable at around 2.19, 2.20. The co-locations might get added, and what might benefit Bharti Infratel from a medium to long-term perspective would be the kind of intensity of data network rollouts that a lot of these telecom operators.
Okay, Mayuresh, we'll have to cut in. The IDFC Bank management is speaking.
Well, that was the management of IDFC. You heard Alexander Matthew pose very important question. They've justified the reason why there was a significant weakness as far as this quarter goes, and there could be weakness lying ahead as well, given the fact that they have provision for deterioration in the gross NPAs. We'll take a very short break on that note. Remember, the Axis management will be addressing the media in a very short while from now. Stay tuned for that.